Hi, it's Lax again, and today we're going to be doing a post-analysis gameplay of my semifinal series of official ladder tournament versus James slash Insult. Obviously, a very good player. In the last kind of money tournament we played, he actually 6-0'd me with some really aggressive plays. So, obviously, no slouch, and he's been performing well to reach this point. So, for a quick review of my prep on my teams, my captain of SEL Vert, he helped me kind of pick out some teams amongst like five I was looking at, and he came up with this idea that James doesn't use a lot of King Gambit, so Combine Ghost Valiant with Taunt is a really good set into him, and that's kind of what I based my team off of. This is actually a team Kebab used in the quarterfinals versus James, and he 6-0 James with a similar looking team on both sides with Combine Taunt Thunderbolt Moonblast Valiant. So the sets I have today, I have a standard Iron Moth with this usual bullshit, aka you hit Fire Dance and 50% chance to boost up and win the game, or 50% chance to be absolutely useless. So I have that. I have your typical Roaring Moon. I have a max attack booster energy Tusk with Ice Spinner, which is very good into his team, seeing as he has no ice and ground resist at the same time. I have a standard King Gambit. I have a Ogre Pawn with an interesting set. I have Sword Stance, Trailblaze, Ivy Cudgel, and then Play Rough. Play Rough is for all the Roaring Moon coming out that have plus attack instead of plus speed. So the Play Rough just one shots it if I boost with the Trailblaze and they use it because Roaring Moon is a common counter to Ogre Pawn. Alright, so to get this game started, I assume he's not leading Pult, which is a little bit of a mistake on my part. And I go for another terrible play here. I go for a Dragon Dance, expecting like a U-turn or something. I didn't think he would Draco and let Iron Valiant or like King Gambit in for free, because that was his mistake in a previous game. But he changed the set from Specs to a probably like a Spell Tagger boot set. So he goes for Thunder Wave, and I should have just knocked off because I can Dragon Dance on pretty much anything anyways, and I can sub versus a Gliscor. So I think that would have really helped me out just knocking and getting rid of this thing. But I just let it die, and then here's where I just bring in Valiant. So I know he's going to keep Pult. Pult is very important for him. So I know he's not going to try to stay in Thunderwave, so I just calm mine. And the Calc vs Goldango, if they have max HP, they do have a chance to live Shadow Ball, so I just go for the Terra Ghost. And then I reveal Taunt as he reveals U-turn on Gliscor, which means that he isn't able to actually touch me, so it's a free boost for me. He U-turns, his plan here is to basically chip my Valiant as much as I can and then try to revenge it with like a Terra Dragonite or something that can eat a move. So he goes to his own Valiant with Booster and hopes to win the speed tie, which he does. I think without that speed tie, it's probably just straight GG, but it gave him a shot there. So now he goes to his Dragonite and I just go for a Moonblast. So I crit multi-scale with +2 special attack. So I'm like spending a lot of my timer like figuring out like what is this set? What is he doing here? Like I spend about 2 minutes figuring out like what his spread he is, what the set is meant to accomplish, and all that stuff. And I figured out that he's actually Assault Vest Dragonite, and because he Terra Ground, that gives me the perfect opportunity to go to Ogre Pawn. And I expect him to hard switch Dragapult because he doesn't want to let like a free Ivy Cudgel claim another kill. He's very behind at this point, so he tries to go Dragapult to bring back momentum. I just go for the Trailblaze and I speed up, and now Play Rough has a 100% chance to kill if I land, so I go for it. He scouts out the knockoff with Gliscor, but at this point, it's basically done and dusted. I Ivy Cudgel, dead. The only way he can win is if he goes Dragapult and dodges my Play Rough, 90% chance, and then hits his Thunderwave, which is also 90% chance. So he forfeits that, and we move on to game two. This is a pretty fast series. So this matchup, this wasn't a team particularly tailored for Insult, but my team is Terrain Extender Rillaboom with like a very bulky spread. I have Dragonite with Dragon Dance, Terra Blast, and Encore, which is a very unique set that isn't uh, very common. I know some people have used it before, but it's still like a surprise factor. People expect the typical Dragonite like a Choice Band or like a Terra Normal Roost. I have Assault Vest Slowking. I have a Mental Herb Sub Combine Enamorous. I have a Lumberry King Gambit, and then I have a Rocky Helm Great Tusk. So this matchup is pretty bad for me. There isn't really any way for me to pressure something like a Ninetales. So my plan here is actually to lead my Dragonite versus Ninetales, and maybe he just thinks there's no threat with it, so he just goes for Aurora Veil as I Dragon Dance, and then I Encore that Aurora Veil, and then try to set up further, and then just kind of take over the game like that. So he leads Rillaboom. So this is just a free Dragon Dance. I'm just going for it. He just goes for U-turn, which reveals he has Choice Band based off that damage. He goes to Ninetales, and my plan here remains the same as like a lead matchup. I'm just gonna attack, Encore Roar Veil, and then keep boosting. So he goes Ninetales. I get a very lucky crit, which means that he has no screens at all, which kind of really screws over the game for him. And it's like a very game deciding crit. Like it's really hard to bounce back from this point. So that crit, I believe, does 99% to like 110%. So he did have a chance to live that as well to add on to like more of the unlucky factor and the luck for me. So he uses a lot of timer at this point to kind of figure out like what can he do to beat this. And here's maybe the biggest mistake I could have ever made in like any game ever, honestly. So I have his, or I'm aware of his team. It is a bulk up Ice Spinner, Terra Poison, Great Tusk set. So I did not, for some reason, think about how Great Tusk is faster than me because I'm just like a lowly Dragonite. I didn't consider the booster in the split second I made my decision, or like the 30 seconds even I made my decision, and I noticed that Terra Blast has a chance to do to 2 a KO. And the thing here is that if he just went for an Ice Spinner off the bat, and I go for a Dragon Dance, then I think I actually lose that exchange, but I might not be certain. I do think like either way, like 99% of the time, Dragon Dance into Encore on bulk up is the move, and he goes for a bulk up, and I foolishly just go for an attack, and I'm like, okay, you know what, this is a pretty big threat, so I'm gonna have to take my multi scale and Encore this, and then switch to my Slowking and hope that I can future sight this thing to death because this thing is actually fairly annoying versus the rest of my team with that speed boost. So I go for future sight. He's stuck in Encore, which means I go to my resist, my only resist, King Gambit. And at this point, it's like, does he choose to sack it? Does he choose to preserve it? And I think most people would choose to preserve it. So I double here, I believe, into my Slowking because I wanted to sack it. He goes Goldango. He just goes for a Shadow Ball versus me as I Assault Vest, eat that critical hit with 1%, and go for a Flamethrower. He just kills me off here. And then I go Namorous, and the Namorous on my team looks like Scarf. It probably should be Scarf. I'm not entirely certain why it's not Scarf, but my team is incredibly slow with this being the fastest Pokemon. And at this point, I'm baiting that I'm Scarf. So I go for a Moonblast, hoping that he'll bring in his Great Tusk here. And he goes Gliscor. That's fine. I don't want to deal with this like Swords Dancing, so I go to my Dragonite to Encore it. I go for a Terra Blast because I thought he would just spam Facade at this point. But he actually goes for Swords Dance, I think to bait me into Encoring so he could get a free switch on the Roaring Moon. I think Dragon Dance again could have been a good play for me, but at the same time, Gliscor would have gone out of hand, I think, if I just kind of went for that trade. But I think Dragon Dance was the better play, and that is another mistake I made. So I really like this set. It's a really cool set, but clearly I'm not, the best at using it. So at this point, I can't let this get a free Dragon Dance, so I just sack my D-Knight. I think D-Knight without multi-scale takes literally 100% from knockoff from Roaring Moon. At this point, I still just pretend that I'm Scarf. Uh, I go for Moonblast. He goes Great Tusk. I think he thought he would eat it and then go for a Spinner Chip, but I revealed that I'm not Scarf. Kill it with Earth Power. And then he goes Gliscor. So he doesn't have Protect on Gliscor, which means that 2 Moonblasts in a row kills basically every time. I think there wasn't like a single roll in which he could survive that. But I killed the Gliscor. He's forced to go into Roaring Moon and go for an Acrobatics to revenge me. And I go to my Great Tusk here. So this endgame is a little bit tricky. So his play here is either Acro and attack, and then I Ice Spinner, and he loses a lot of HP, and then he has to Acro again and take Helm, and then I go Rillaboom, Rillaboom revenge this, and his Choice Band Rillaboom can't beat my King Gambit and my Rillaboom. So the play here for him is probably to go his own Rillaboom, hope he lives the Ice Spinner, and then try to get some damage on Tusk for the Roaring Moon. But I actually calculated at this point. So he goes for Ice Spinner, or I go for Ice Spinner on Rillaboom, which removes Grassy Terrain. And the roll to kill this is actually about 46% to like 55 or 56%. So it's basically a 50-50 roll, and if he lives it, he can woodhammer me and kill me. But something I realized is that the bulky spread that Ima provided me for my own Rillaboom with Drain Punch, which is an unexpected move on it, is enough to kind of do damage to Roaring Moon and then grassy glide it into range of King Gambit. And I felt pretty favored in that 50-50 despite him having Brick Break. I thought that this would require me to lose two 50-50s, obviously one being a 50-50 I can control, and one being a 50-50 I can control with Sucker Punch versus Brick Break. So I go for the Ice Spinner. I do end up killing the Rillaboom. And then he goes for Acrobatics. Only does 50%. I go for Ice Spinner again. Does a lot of damage. And the Rocky Helmet puts him into Rillaboom range and then ends up finishing him off. So, like I said, like this was a pretty lucky game, I think, by me. Obviously, with the early turn crit. I do think I was in a pretty good position, being a +2 speed boosted Dragonite, +2 attack boosted Dragonite versus a screen set on Ninetales. And then anything he had, like Great Tusk or Gliscor, actually couldn't boost up versus me because I have Encore, so they're forced to attack, which means that my multi-scale lets me boost again and do even more damage, etc. Forces Terra again. So I don't think it was like a complete loss situation if I didn't crit, but I do think it really helped a lot in my game. And then that ended up with me kind of like, choking away and not Dragon Dancing again, which was another big mistake. But overall, I think he might have played like a bit better than me this game, and I outplayed him in the first game. And that's kind of, it's kind of Pokemon. Like you get lucky, you get unlucky, and kind of how you deal with it is like what kind of player you are. Obviously, there was nothing like he could do about it, but at the end of the day, that's Pokemon. Luck happens, it happens, and it could happen to you, it could happen against you, and can't really control that. What you can control is how you play, and I clearly made some pretty large mistakes. But thank you guys for listening, and I'm looking forward to the finals versus my friend Bert. Thank you.